Taylor Heinicke just wins. Or, at least in the case of last week, he doesn't lose. And for the Commanders and head coach Ron Rivera, Heinicke's ability to keep racking up W's and avoiding L's appears to be the driving force behind his remaining at starting quarterback, despite Carson Wentz apparently healthy enough to return. But winning is a result, not a function. If winning was something you could just do, then my channel wouldn't exist. And yet, Heinicke does seem to answer the, well, can this guy win question with a resounding yes this season. Which, side note, and I say this as a capital H, capital G Heinicke guy, but he's one of those guys that just hasn't really won that much before this year. He truly is a rare case of a QB with average talent that most people want to root for. For instance, that Tampa Bay wildcard game might have been a close loss for the football team at the time, but it was a blowout win for Heinicke. Or, in Green Bay last year, we remember the Lambeau Leap, laughed when he fell just a yard short, and then forgot that this drive ultimately ended in 0 points. We seem to do that with him constantly. This year, though, there's apparently some real substance to him, but he definitely isn't showing it off in an obvious way. In a blind resume test, it's hard to know which 3 stat lines are the losers and which is the Heinicke. So, how is Heinicke winning with numbers like that? Especially when Wentz couldn't win with numbers like this. And remember, it's not that Wentz couldn't throw the ball well. In fact, he was actually pretty good at hitting Terry McLaurin and Curtis Samuel for long touchdowns off play action, something he did consistently in his highest rated game of the year according to PFF against Tennessee. Meanwhile, Heinicke's deep balls more often resembled prayers being answered by the football gods. Let's never forget this one against Minnesota, where their DBs are forced to be sacrificed in order for us to enjoy this greatness. But the thing is, while Wentz could hit the deeper stuff, the Washington offense relied too heavily on him to continue moving the chains, and he couldn't oblige. Check out this moment against the Jags on opening day, where he makes a good scramble early to make the later downs more manageable, but then the Commanders fail to execute on 2 short pass attempts to get the first. On second down, he just throws the pass too low for his tight end to catch, and on the third down, Washington motions into an empty backfield, and Jacksonville decides to send only 3 rushers and muddy the field to force Wentz to throw out of rhythm to his receiver. Washington's offense through the first 6 games was a lot more Wentz-focused, while the Commanders today see a lot more versatility in their play calling, and this bears itself out in their first down play distribution between the 2 periods. The number of running and passing first downs with the Heinicke offense is a lot more even than the abundance of passing first downs the Wentz offense saw. And everything becomes a lot easier for Heinicke with this offensive balance. For example, during Washington's second drive in the now famous Philadelphia game, the Commanders ran out of shotgun to convert their first 2 third and shorts, and then they used play action for the next one. And while the run fake doesn't drop the linebackers further into the box, Washington does catch Philly protecting the deep shot off of it, with 3 guys focused on the deep guy to get McLaurin open in middle depth. Heinicke then acts more like a cog in the machine rather than its operator. Of course, to be fair to Wentz, it's a lot easier to be part of a system when that system is suddenly playing better defense and has turned into a legitimate running threat. Washington's point and yard differential have essentially flipped from Wentz to Heinicke. They've gone from middle of the road as a rushing team to one of the better attacks in the league. And all the while, Heinicke has more often enjoyed leads at halftime and to start the fourth quarter, as Wentz was playing from behind more often than not. And with Chase Young in the wings returning from injury and rookie running back Brian Robinson gaining experience, there's no reason not to expect the Commanders to continue rolling in these facets of the game. So, is Heinicke doing anything to influence these wins? Or is it just right place, right time? I think there's some of that for sure, but there are also things he's doing that aren't as easy to see at first glance. Take for example his much lower sack totals compared to Wentz, and while yeah, the O-line has a lot to do with these numbers, the quarterback can also bear some of the responsibility, especially when there's this kind of discrepancy between 2 quarterbacks on the same team. When we look at PFF's P2S percentage stat, or pressure to sack percentage, Heinicke has a much lower rate than Wentz, meaning that his pressures result in sacks far less often than when Wentz was pressured. And we see that in the film too, where Wentz is an okay scrambler but has a tendency to be a bit hesitant and stagnant in the pocket. We see that here on these back-to-back sacks in Wentz's matchup against Philly in Week 3. This is a different approach to Heinicke, who more often steps up into the pocket as it breaks down around him. Heinicke also appears to have a tighter chemistry with receivers McLaurin and Samuel, who have both seen their numbers surge with him as the starter. With McLaurin in particular, Heinicke seems to have a special connection. In his first start against the Packers, Heinicke has to hit a 3rd and 7 to ice the game, and he and McLaurin work together on a comeback route to get a new set of downs late in the 4th. Green Bay is showing blitz up front and pressing the Commanders' receivers pre-snap. With one safety back deep, Heinicke knows this look means he won't have much time to throw it. But McLaurin works some magic on his island near the sideline, launching himself forward to go get the ball, a necessary move considering it's losing its zip with Heinicke getting crushed in the pocket off the quick pressure. Plus, I can't not feature some of that patented Heinicke savvy that helps keep drives alive, the type of stuff you don't see other guys do. Like here, when Heinicke makes one of my favorite plays of the season, seriously. He gets a high snap over his head in Philly. In almost every way right now, Heinicke is screwed. But he doesn't panic. He scoops the ball up and in one motion gets out of the pocket, the space made by the outside of the offensive tackles, and whips one towards the line of scrimmage marker, all to avoid the intentional grounding penalty. Rather than find themselves in a 2nd and 25 plus, the Commanders faced a 2nd and 10, which they ended up converting and turning into a touchdown, a major part in dealing Philadelphia their first loss of the season. Still, it takes more than just clever tricks and a good run game to win with one of the worst passers statistically, at least to win this much. And don't get me wrong, even though he's winning, the margins are thin. Like that famous Philadelphia win, which included a career-long field goal from kicker Joey Sly, or that Green Bay game where, despite all but dominating for most of the contest, the game ended on a not-so-buttoned-up rugby play. But what Washington's coaching staff has done especially well is understanding what Heinicke's weaknesses are as a passer and playing the chess game against opposing defenses. Take one look at Heinicke's pass chart and you'll see the middle of the field as one of his weakest areas. He loves assailing these ones. And here, you'll see Green Bay leverage the sidelines with their defense and dare him to beat them in the middle on a 3rd and 8. Just look at how they're lined up. After the ball is snapped, Green Bay's middle linebacker fakes the blitz and backs up into coverage to be the sole defender in short depth, while the safety over to the right side of the field starts to move middle as he and the cornerbacks move into a cover 3 look. While all of the coverage near and past the sticks is concerned with funneling their receivers to the middle for a gift from Taylor, Washington's Curtis Samuel is running right behind the lone backer and into space, right where Heinicke's supposed weakness is. Overall, Heinicke has just found ways to keep the momentum on Washington's side, for whatever it's worth. One thing that's a little more quantifiable is the Commanders' improvement in time of possession from the start of the season to now. With Heinicke, the Commanders have grown to being one of the most possessive teams in football, and it seems to be the difference maker. Remember that Tennessee game with Wentz? That was his best rated game of the season. The Commanders outgained the Titans by nearly 140 yards overall and over 200 yards passing, but check the time of possession. Washington loses that battle and loses the game. Wentz could hit the big plays, but he and the offense couldn't get anything sustained. Conversely, Heinicke's Commanders dominated Green Bay on the ground and, more importantly, dominated them on time of possession. This was Heinicke's worst graded game of the year. And yes, it's fair to mention that a lot of the time that time of possession stat is more a symptom of winning than an actual causation, but Heinicke seems to remain a winner, or at least not a loser, because he's successfully steering a ship of talented players around him and keeps the ball because of it. I don't think Heinicke is in his role to throw touchdown passes, rack up a bunch of yardage, or make things look pretty. I think he's in there simply to move the chains. He makes big plays in big moments, and he's a quarterback that makes you believe anything and feel everything. He's just Taylor Heinicke.